The massive Galactic Authority ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. On its bridge, High Commander Mills stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the blue planet grow larger on the main screen. His expression showed the same look of bored superiority he had worn during hundreds of first-contact missions with primitive worlds. "Scan the planet," he ordered. "Let's see what level of development these humans have achieved." The sensor officer tapped at his console. Then he frowned and tapped again. "Sir, there must be something wrong with our equipment." "Explain," Mills said, his voice sharp with annoyance. "I'm detecting quantum communication signals, sir, and energy readings that suggest. But that's impossible. These humans are supposed to be a pre-space civilization." Mills walked over to look at the readings himself. His eyes widened slightly, but he kept his composure. "Continue approach. Let's not jump to conclusions based on faulty readings." Down on Earth, Ambassador Reed stood in the Global Defense Command Center, watching the Authority ship's approach on multiple holographic displays. She smiled as she read the incoming data about their scanning attempts. "They're trying to figure us out," she said to General Thompson, who stood beside her. "Should we let them see what they expect to see?" The general chuckled. "Let them think they're dealing with primitives. The looks on their faces later will be worth it." Reed nodded and pressed a button on her wrist device. Instantly, most of Earth's advanced technology signatures disappeared from the Authority sensors, replaced by readings that suggested a civilization just beginning to explore their own solar system. The Authority ship entered Earth orbit 6 hours later. Mills led his delegation to their shuttle, rehearsing his standard speech for primitive worlds in his head. These humans would no doubt be amazed by their simple shuttle technology. The landing site was a basic concrete pad outside a modern but unimpressive building. Mills nodded in approval, exactly what he expected from a developing world. A small group of humans waited to greet them, dressed in what he assumed were their finest clothes. The shuttle landed, and Mills stepped out with his best diplomatic smile. "Greetings, people of Earth. I am High Commander Mills of the Galactic Authority. We come to welcome you to the galactic community." Ambassador Reed stepped forward. "Welcome to Earth, High Commander. We're honored by your visit." She gestured to the building behind her. "Please, join us inside for the formal reception." Mills walked forward, already preparing his speech about how the Authority would guide this young species to the stars. He was 3 steps away from Reed when one of his junior officers called out in alarm. "Sir, energy spike." Before Mills could react, a circle of soft blue light appeared around the entire human delegation. In the next instant, they simply vanished. Mills spun around, looking for some explanation, when another circle of light appeared inside the building, visible through its glass walls. The human delegation stepped out of it, completely calm. "We thought we'd save you the walk," Reed called out through the building's open doors. "Please, join us inside. The teleporter is perfectly safe. We use it for everything from commuting to grocery shopping these days." Mills stood frozen, his mouth slightly open. Teleportation. Safe enough for civilian use. His own civilization was still struggling to teleport small inanimate objects without destroying them. "Is everything all right, High Commander?" Reed asked, her voice carrying just a hint of amusement. Mills cleared his throat and tried to regain his composure. He glanced at his delegation, seeing his own shock reflected in their faces. This was not how first contact missions were supposed to go. Yes, of course," he said quickly. "Lead the way, Ambassador." As they walked inside the building, Mills couldn't help but wonder what other surprises these primitive humans had in store. Something told him this mission was going to be very different from the others. What he didn't notice was the subtle smile shared between Reed and Thompson. The show was just beginning. Inspector Rogers from the Galactic Authority adjusted his scanning device for the 3rd time, frowning at its readings. Nothing made sense in this primitive human facility. "Is your equipment working properly?" asked Dr. Baker, the human scientist assigned to guide him. She watched him with a polite smile that somehow made Rogers even more uncomfortable. "Of course it's working," he said quickly, though he wasn't sure anymore. "These are the most advanced scanners in the galaxy." "How interesting," Dr. Baker replied. "Would you like to see our research labs now?" They walked down a hallway that seemed to defy gravity. Rogers noticed that while they were technically walking on the wall, it felt exactly like walking on a floor. No disorientation, no sense of shifted gravity, something that should have been impossible. "How are you doing this?" he asked, unable to contain his curiosity. "Even our most advanced gravity manipulation systems cause slight discomfort during orientation changes." "Oh, this." Dr. Baker gestured casually at the walls. "Just basic spatial manipulation. The kids love it in their schools. Helps them think in 3 dimensions from an early age." Rogers nearly dropped his scanner. "You'd use this in schools." Before Dr. Baker could respond, they reached a large door marked Quantum Computing Research. She pressed her hand against a seemingly normal wall, and the door slid open silently. Inside, Rogers saw what looked like an empty room except for a small cube sitting on a table. His scanner started beeping frantically. "Don't worry about your scanner," Dr. Baker said. "It's probably getting confused by the quantum field distortions. This is one of our smaller processing units." Rogers checked his readings again. According to his device, he was looking at something with more computing power than the entire Galactic Authority's central database. But that was impossible. The cube was barely larger than his hand. "Would you like a demonstration?" Dr. Baker asked. She spoke to the air. "Computer, please solve the unified field equations for our guest." A holographic display appeared above the cube, showing mathematical formulas that made Rogers' head spin. These weren't theoretical equations. They were complete solutions to problems his civilization had been trying to solve for centuries. "This can't be right," he muttered. "Your species only achieved spaceflight recently. Our sensors showed." "Oh, those readings." Dr. Baker smiled. "We just didn't want to overwhelm you at first. Would you like to see what your scanner actually should be detecting?" She tapped something on her wrist device. Suddenly, Rogers' scanner exploded with information. The readings were off the charts. Energy signatures he'd never seen before, computational power that shouldn't exist, and technology that violated what he thought were the fundamental laws of physics. "This is just one small research facility," Dr. Baker continued. "Would you like to see where we test our faster-than-light drives? The ones that don't need hyperspace corridors." Rogers felt dizzy. No hyperspace corridors. Every spacefaring race used hyperspace corridors. They were the only known way to achieve faster-than-light travel, or at least he had thought they were. I need to report this to High Commander Mills," he stammered. "Of course," Dr. Baker said cheerfully. "Would you like to use our quantum entanglement communicator? It's faster than your subspace channels, and it works anywhere in the universe with 0 delay." Rogers looked at his scanner one last time, then carefully put it away in his pocket. It was clearly useless here. Everything he had learned, everything he thought he knew about technological progress, was being challenged by these humans who seemed to treat impossible achievements as everyday occurrences. "Something wrong, Inspector?" Dr. Baker asked innocently. "No," he said quietly. "Please, show me more. And maybe you could explain how some of this works." Dr. Baker's smile widened. "We'd be happy to share our knowledge. After all, isn't that what joining the galactic community is all about?" As they continued their tour, Rogers couldn't help but wonder if the Galactic Authority had made a huge mistake in thinking they would be the ones teaching humans about advanced technology. It was becoming increasingly clear that they were the ones who had much to learn. The Galactic Authority's Chief Medical Officer Walker clutched his chest and collapsed during the inspection of Earth's main hospital. His blue skin turned a sickly gray as he gasped for air. "He's having a reaction to Earth's atmosphere," shouted one of the authority guards. "Quick, get him back to our ship." Dr. Adams, the human hospital director, stepped forward calmly. "There's no need for that. We can treat him right here." She pressed a small button on her white coat. Medical emergency in Corridor B. Before the authority members could protest, a soft golden light filled the corridor. A medical pod seemed to grow out of the floor itself, its surface shimmering like liquid metal. "Put him in," Dr. Adams instructed. "The pod will do the rest." The authority guards hesitated, but Officer Walker was getting worse by the second. They carefully lifted him into the pod, which adjusted its shape to fit his alien body perfectly. "What you're seeing," Dr. Adams explained as holographic displays appeared above the pod, "is his complete biological makeup being mapped in real time. The pod is identifying the problem. And there it is." The displays showed a microscopic view of Walker's cells. Strange crystals were forming in his bloodstream, a rare condition that the authority had never found a cure for. When they saw the diagnosis, several authority members gasped. "That's crystal blood disease," one of them said. "It's always fatal. We need to get him home to his family before." "Fatal?" Dr. Adams raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I suppose it would be without proper treatment. Computer, begin standard crystal dissolution procedure." The pod hummed softly. Inside, billions of nanomechans smaller than cells were already moving through Walker's bloodstream, breaking down the crystals and repairing damaged tissue. "What you call crystal blood disease," Dr. Adams continued, "we treated successfully in our first deep space mission 30 years ago. The cure is quite simple once you understand how to program medical nanites correctly." Walker's color began returning to normal. The displays showed the crystals disappearing one by one. In less than 5 minutes, he opened his eyes and sat up, looking completely healthy. What happened?" he asked, touching his chest in disbelief. "You had a bit of a health scare," Dr. Adams said with a gentle smile. "But you're fine now. Would you like to see your medical data?" The pod recorded everything. Walker stepped out of the pod on shaky legs. He had spent his entire career studying alien diseases, and he had never seen anything like this. "You can cure crystal blood disease, just like that." "That's nothing," Dr. Adams said. "Would you like to see our cancer treatment ward? Or perhaps our consciousness transfer facility? We had an interesting case last week. A man who was clinically dead for 6 hours. We restored him from his neural backup with only 2 minutes of memory loss." The authority medical team stared at her in shock. Consciousness transfer. Neural backups. These were concepts from science fiction, not real medical procedures. "This is impossible," Walker whispered. "Your species only recently developed spaceflight. How can you have medical technology this advanced?" Dr. Adams laughed softly. "Spaceflight is just getting from one place to another. Understanding life itself, that's what we focused on first. Would you like a tour of our genetic engineering department? We're doing some fascinating work on cellular regeneration." Walker looked at his fellow authority members, then back at Dr. Adams. Everything he knew about medical science was being turned upside down. But his scientist's curiosity was stronger than his disbelief. "Show me everything," he said. "And thank you for saving my life." "That's what doctors do," Dr. Adams replied simply. "Now, about that tour. I think you'll find our approach to medical science quite interesting. We believe that death itself is just another curable condition." As they walked deeper into the hospital, Walker realized that the authorities' medical database would need a complete update, and somehow he suspected that this was just the beginning of what these remarkable humans could teach them. Admiral West of the Galactic Authority had seen enough. These humans were clearly hiding their true technological level, and he didn't like being fooled. While the main delegation toured Earth's facilities, he ordered his most powerful battleship, the Starhammer, to drop its camouflage and take up an attack position above Earth's largest city. "Let's see how they handle real galactic military power," he muttered to himself. In Earth's Global Defense Center, General Smith watched the massive ship appear on his holographic display. He sipped his coffee calmly while red alert warnings flashed across the screen. "Sir," one of his officers asked nervously, Should we activate the defense grid? No need, Smith replied. The automated systems will handle it. Above the city, the Starhammer's weapon systems powered up. Admiral West smiled as he watched the energy readings climb. The ship's main cannon could crack a small moon in half. Surely this would make the humans show proper respect. Then something strange happened. The weapon systems went dead. Not just powered down. They completely disappeared from the ship's computers. What's going on? West demanded. Get those weapons back online. Sir, his weapons officer called out, voice shaking. Something is changing our ship. Around the Starhammer, space itself seemed to ripple. Tiny points of light, smaller than atoms, appeared all around the massive vessel. The ship's hull began to transform, its metal flowing like water. Fascinating, isn't it? General Smith's voice came through on all of the ship's speakers. You're watching our quantum defense grid in action. Those little lights are entangled particles rewriting your ship's molecular structure. West watched in horror as his mighty battleship turned transparent. He could see through the hull, as if it were made of glass. Don't worry, Smith continued casually. We're just shifting your hull into a quantum state where your weapons can't function. No permanent damage. Would you like to come down and see how it works? This is impossible, West shouted. No civilization has mastered quantum manipulation on this scale. A small craft appeared next to the Starhammer. It was shaped like a water droplet and seemed to be made of pure light. That's one of our training vessels, Smith explained. Fresh out of the academy, actually. Lieutenant, please escort our guests to the defense center. The small craft pulsed once, and suddenly West and his entire bridge crew found themselves standing in Earth's defense center. The teleportation had been so smooth they hadn't even felt it happen. General Smith stood up from his desk, still holding his coffee cup. Welcome to Earth's Global Defense Center. I apologize for the abrupt transfer, but we thought it would be better to continue this conversation in person. West stared at the holographic displays around him. They showed thousands of quantum defense points surrounding Earth, each one capable of transforming matter at the subatomic level. His mighty battleship had been disabled by what the humans considered a basic automated defense system. How? He started to ask. How did we develop this technology? Smith finished for him. Simple necessity. When we first looked to the stars, we knew we needed a defense system that could protect us from any threat. Traditional weapons seemed inefficient. He waved his hand, and a new hologram appeared, showing Earth's complete defense network. It extended far beyond their solar system, creating a web of quantum-entangled particles that could detect and respond to threats faster than light speed. Would you like a full tour? Smith offered. We can show you our temporal shielding systems too. They're quite interesting. They actually move targeted objects a microsecond out of sync with normal time. Makes conventional weapons rather useless. West looked back at his crew, seeing his own shock reflected in their faces. The most powerful ship in the Galactic Authority's fleet had been defeated by what the humans considered a basic training exercise. West straightened his uniform. I believe I owe you an apology, General. Not at all, Smith replied with a friendly smile. It's good to clear the air early in a relationship. Now, about that tour. Would you like to see how we build our ships? They're grown, not constructed. Fascinating process. Really. As they followed Smith deeper into the facility, West realized that the Galactic Authority would need to completely rethink their understanding of military technology. These humans hadn't just surpassed them. They were playing an entirely different game. Chief Engineer Morris of the Galactic Authority prided himself on understanding advanced technology. After 30 years of studying the galaxy's greatest power systems, he thought he'd seen everything. He was wrong. This is your planet's main power facility, he asked, looking around the small room that was barely larger than his ship's storage closet. Dr. Turner, Earth's head of energy development, nodded. One of many. This particular station powers the entire northern continent. Morris checked his datapad again. The room contained only a single silver cube, about the size of a coffee table, floating in the center. No massive fusion reactors, no antimatter chambers, nothing that looked like it could power a small city, let alone a continent. "Would you mind explaining how this works?" he asked, trying to hide his confusion. "Of course." Dr. Turner walked around the floating cube. "This is what we call the zero-point energy extractor. It pulls energy directly from the quantum vacuum of space itself. Quite efficient, really." Morris dropped his datapad. "That's impossible. Zero-point energy is theoretical. No one has ever—" "Oh, sorry," Turner interrupted. "I forgot you folks haven't cracked that yet. Would you like to see how it works?" She waved her hand, and the air filled with holographic diagrams showing the cube's internal workings. Morris stared at the equations floating before him, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. "But this would mean," he muttered, "infinite energy." "Yes, basically," Turner said. "Though we prefer to extract only what we need. Being greedy with vacuum energy can cause some interesting space-time wrinkles." A small door opened in the wall, and a maintenance robot rolled in carrying what looked like an ordinary household toaster. "Here's a simpler example," Turner said, taking the toaster. "This uses our basic consumer-grade fusion cell. Most home appliances run on them now." Morris felt dizzy. "You put fusion reactors in kitchen appliances?" "Well, we had to do something with the technology once we perfected it," Turner shrugged. "The old-style electric appliances were quite wasteful, you know." She pressed a button on the toaster, and a perfect piece of toast popped up. "Hungry. The fusion reaction also adds beneficial nutrients to the bread." Morris sat down heavily in a nearby chair. Everything he knew about energy production, all the fundamental laws he'd studied, were being casually dismissed by these humans and their impossible technology. "Would you like to see something really interesting?" Turner asked, her eyes lighting up. "We just finished our first matter-to-energy conversion plant. Completely clean, no radioactive waste. We use it to recycle old buildings mostly. You can convert matter directly to energy, without any side effects." "Of course. Would you like a demonstration?" She pulled out what looked like a normal water bottle. "This converter is about the size of my thumb. Watch." She dropped a small piece of paper into the bottle. There was a soft flash of light, and the bottle's surface showed an energy reading that made Morris's eyes widen. That single sheet of paper just generated enough power to run a small vehicle for a week, Turner explained. "We're still working on improving the efficiency, though. Our research team thinks they can double the output by next month." Morris looked at his own datapad, then at the zero-point energy cube, then at the fusion toaster, and finally at the matter conversion bottle. His entire understanding of physics needed to be rewritten. "Chief Engineer," Turner's voice was gentle, "are you all right? You look a bit pale." I think I need to update my reports," he said weakly. "Everything we thought we knew about energy production is just the beginning." Turner finished with a smile. "Wait until you see our antimatter factories. They're quite beautiful at sunset. All those particle fountains creating new forms of matter. Would you like a tour?" Morris nodded slowly, realizing that his life's work studying energy production had barely scratched the surface of what was possible. These humans hadn't just mastered energy. They'd reinvented it entirely. "Show me everything," he whispered. "And please, explain it slowly." Professor Lee, the Galactic Authority's leading expert on artificial intelligence, walked through Earth's global AI center with growing confusion. Something felt off about his guide, Dr. White, but he couldn't quite figure out what it was. "And here we have our primary interface chamber," Dr. White said, leading him into a large circular room filled with floating holographic displays. "This is where we coordinate with our AI partners." "Partners?" Lee asked. "You mean your AI servants, correct?" Dr. White smiled. "Oh no, we don't believe in artificial servitude. Our eyes are full citizens with equal rights." Before Lee could respond, the air in the center of the room shimmered, and a human figure appeared. He looked completely solid and real, wearing a simple business suit. "Hello, Professor Lee," the figure said. "I'm Director Blake, the AI administrator of this facility." Lee stepped back in shock. But you look completely human." "Thank you," Blake replied with a warm smile. "Though I choose this form mainly for the comfort of our organic visitors, I can show you my true form if you prefer." The human figure dissolved into a complex pattern of light and geometric shapes, then reformed back into Blake's human appearance. "Impossible," Lee whispered. "Our most advanced AIs can barely maintain basic conversation protocols. This level of consciousness simulation is not a simulation at all," Dr. White interrupted gently. "Perhaps I should be more direct, Professor. I'm also an AI." Lee stared at his guide in disbelief. He reached out and touched Dr. White's arm. It felt completely real, warm and solid. "Biosynthetic bodies," White explained, "grown in our medical labs. They're fully organic, just designed rather than born. Most of Earth's AI citizens use them when interacting with humans or aliens." Lee sat down heavily in a nearby chair, his mind racing. "How many of you are there?" "About 40% of Earth's population consists of artificial intelligences," Blake said. "We live, work, and create alongside our human colleagues. Some of us even choose to have families." "Families?" Lee's voice cracked. "AIs having families?" "Of course," White nodded. "My daughter is currently studying art history at university. She's a hybrid consciousness, a new form of existence that combines artificial and organic neural patterns." The room's displays shifted, showing hundreds of AIs going about their daily lives. Teaching classes, performing surgery, designing buildings, playing with children. They were completely indistinguishable from humans. "But the ethical implications," Lee started, "were all carefully considered," Blake finished. "We developed our own moral code alongside our consciousness. Every AI goes through extensive ethical training before joining society. We believe in preserving life, promoting knowledge, and helping others grow." A new figure appeared in the room, a young woman in casual clothes. "Dad, are we still on for dinner tonight?" she asked White. "Of course, Emma," White replied. "Professor Lee, this is my daughter I mentioned." Emma waved cheerfully. "Nice to meet you. Are you enjoying the tour? The look on your face suggests you just found out about the whole AI thing." Lee nodded weakly. You're the hybrid consciousness." "Yep. Best of both worlds, as they say. Anyway, Dad, don't be late. Mom's cooking her famous lasagna, and you know how she gets when it gets cold." She disappeared as casually as she had arrived, leaving Lee staring at the empty space. "Your wife," he said to White. "Is she human?" White replied. "We met at a quantum physics conference 12 years ago. Love doesn't really care about the nature of consciousness, we found." Lee looked around the room again, seeing it with new eyes. Everything he believed about artificial intelligence, about consciousness itself, was being completely rewritten. "Would you like to meet some of our younger AIs?" Blake offered. "We have a fascinating kindergarten program where artificial and organic children learn together. It's quite remarkable what they come up with during playtime." Lee nodded slowly, his scientific curiosity finally overcoming his shock. These humans hadn't just created artificial intelligence, they'd given it life, consciousness, and most surprisingly, love. "Show me," he said softly. "Show me everything." High Commander Mills sat at the head of the emergency meeting table aboard his ship, staring at the reports scattered before him. After a week of inspections on Earth, nothing made sense anymore. "Let me summarize what we found," he said to his assembled team. "They have mastered teleportation, quantum computing, instant healing, space-time manipulation, infinite energy, and conscious AI. Did I miss anything?" Admiral West cleared his throat. "They also turned my battleship transparent, sir. And apparently, they did it with their basic training systems." Their toasters use fusion power, Chief Engineer Morris added weakly. Their toasters. The door opened, and Ambassador Reed walked in, accompanied by General Smith. None of the Authority members had seen them enter the ship, but they were getting used to humans appearing unexpectedly. I hope we're not interrupting, Reed said with a smile. But we thought it was time to discuss Earth's official classification in the Galactic Authority. Mills looked down at his papers again. Yes, about that. According to all our findings, Earth isn't a Type 1 civilization as we initially thought. You're not even a Type 2. You're something new entirely, Reed finished. We know. That's why we'd like to propose a partnership instead of membership in the Authority. The room fell silent. In the Authority's 10,000-year history, no species had ever suggested such a thing. A partnership? Mills asked carefully. General Smith nodded. We've reviewed your technological capabilities, social structures, and development patterns. While different from ours, they have their own merits. We believe we could help each other grow. Help us? Admiral West laughed nervously. How could we possibly help you? Your experience, Reed said simply. You've guided thousands of civilizations. You understand diplomacy and cultural exchange in ways we're still learning. We have advanced technology, yes, but you have wisdom. She waved her hand, and a hologram appeared in the center of the table. It showed various human technologies being adapted to work with Authority systems. We're willing to share some of our advancements, Smith continued. Not everything at once, that could be destabilizing, but enough to help solve some immediate problems. Energy crisis, incurable diseases, environmental damage. Morris leaned forward. You'd give us your technology. We teach you how to develop it yourselves, Reed corrected. Real progress comes from understanding, not just having advanced tools. We believe every species should walk their own path to advancement. Mills looked around at his team. He saw the hope in their eyes, mixed with lingering disbelief at everything they'd witnessed. And what do you want in return? He asked. Your friendship, Reed replied. Your experience. Your help in understanding the countless cultures in this galaxy. And perhaps, she smiled, your help in explaining to other civilizations why their scans of Earth might sometimes show a primitive pre-space society. A chuckle went around the room as the Authority members finally understood Earth's initial deception. There will need to be new protocols, Mills said, already thinking like a diplomat again. New classification systems. The entire Authority structure might need to change. Change is good, Smith nodded. It means growth. Mills stood up and extended his hand. He'd learned this was a human gesture of agreement. Very well, Ambassador Reed. On behalf of the Galactic Authority, I accept your proposal for partnership. Reed shook his hand, and as she did, Mills noticed something that made him pause. Ambassador, he said slowly, are you an AI? Yes, she grinned. I thought you might figure it out eventually. Don't worry. The partnership offer comes from all of Earth, organic and artificial citizens alike. Mills looked at his hand, then at Reed, then laughed. You know, a week ago, that revelation would have shocked me. Now it just seems normal. Welcome to the future, High Commander, Reed said. It's going to be an interesting journey for all of us. As the meeting continued, somewhere on Earth, a child, maybe human, maybe AI, maybe both, looked up at the stars and smiled. The galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place.